Before we begin, subscribe, like, and drop your theories in the comments, because by the end of this story, you won't know who to trust. The call came in just after sunrise. A jogger found a body near Lake Mirren, wrapped in a gray blanket, half hidden by reeds and fog. Detective Claire Jensen had been with the county sheriff's office for 12 years, but something about this scene made her stomach tighten. The mist rolled low across the lake, the air cold enough to sting. The victim was a young woman, mid-20s, blonde hair matted with rain, a faint bruise on her temple. Her phone was found 5 feet away, still unlocked, its last outgoing call time-stamped at 2:14 a.m. The name on the call log? Amber W. The victim was Leila Trent, a local art student known for her volunteer work and her bright personality. She'd been missing for less than 12 hours. Amber Watkins, her best friend since high school, was the one who filed the missing person report earlier that morning. When detectives arrived at Amber's townhouse, she was already waiting outside, hair wet from the rain, arms wrapped around herself. She looked pale but composed, the kind of calm that made investigators uneasy. She said, "I was with her last night. We went out for drinks, just the two of us. She wanted to talk about something important, but she never told me what it was." Claire's partner, Louis Moreno, asked her when they parted ways. "Around 11:30, Amber replied. "She said she was taking a ride-share home." That detail would become the first crack in her story. The bar confirmed they'd both been there. 2 glasses of wine, a shared appetizer, a quiet night. But the rideshare logs told a different story. Leila hadn't booked any car after 11:30 p.m. Her phone remained active until 2:14 a.m. when that final call was made to Amber's number. When detectives confronted Amber with the discrepancy, her composure faltered for the first time. I didn't get any call," she insisted. "My phone was dead. I was asleep." But when the forensic team pulled cell tower data, both phones pinged from the same quadrant, near Lake Mirren, around that same time. Amber's explanation didn't just fall apart, it imploded. By the second day, the case drew media attention. Local woman found dead by lake, best friend questioned. Detective Claire Jensen knew how these stories played out in the public eye. Rumor first, truth last. Still, even within the department, whispers spread. It was always the friend, the boyfriend, or both. But this case wasn't that simple. When Leila's autopsy came back, it showed no signs of assault, no drugs, no clear cause of death. Just water in her lungs, drowning, though she wasn't found in the water. Someone had moved her. Her fingernails had traces of red fibers, synthetic, from clothing, and faint bruising around the wrists. Not defensive, but restrained. Amber agreed to a second interview at the station, this time with audio recording. She looked exhausted, makeup smudged, her nails bitten down. She said, "You're treating me like I did something." Claire replied, "We're treating this like what it is, a suspicious death." Amber's story shifted again. She claimed Leila had been seeing someone, a man named Eli, and that they had argued the night before. But there was no record of any Eli in Leila's contacts, social media, or messages. When asked for details, Amber hesitated. "He's not online. He's private." That word hung in the room like smoke. Claire had seen this before, lies mixed with half-truths, guilt tangled with fear. Still, something about Amber's demeanor felt off. Not arrogance, not panic. Something colder, calculated. That evening, investigators obtained a warrant for Amber's phone. They expected to find calls, maybe texts she'd deleted. What they found instead was stranger. Between midnight and 3 a.m., her phone had been switched to airplane mode. When reactivated, it connected briefly near the lake, the same window when Leila's phone stopped transmitting. But one photo in Amber's gallery froze the entire team. It was taken at 2:12 a.m., 2 minutes before Leela's final call. A blurry image of lake water under moonlight. In the corner, a pale hand breaking the surface. The next morning, Claire met Amber again, this time not at the station. Amber had called, asking to clear the air. They met at a quiet cafe downtown. Amber looked different, composed again, almost rehearsed. She said, "You think I killed her?" Claire replied, "I think you're not telling the whole truth." Amber stared at her coffee. "She wanted to tell you something, about a video. She was scared." Claire leaned forward. "What video?" Amber didn't answer directly. "You'll find it. She hid it in her car. Just be careful whose side you're on." Then she stood up and left, leaving the untouched coffee steaming in the air. Detectives located Leela's car that afternoon, an old blue Honda Civic, parked near the edge of town, dusted with rain and pollen. Inside the glove compartment, they found a USB drive wrapped in paper towels. The drive contained a single video file, time-stamped the night before her death. Leela appeared on screen, sitting in her bedroom. She looked nervous, glancing at the door repeatedly. "If something happens to me, it's because of what I found. And if Amber sees this, I'm sorry." The video cut off abruptly, replaced by static. The forensic team began decoding the corrupted portion. But before they could finish, Detective Moreno called Claire from the evidence room. "You need to see this," he said, voice tense. They'd run trace analysis on the red fibers found under Leela's nails. They matched a specific fabric, a limited edition scarlet wool coat sold by a boutique downtown. Only 10 units had been purchased in the county. One of them, the latest credit card buyer, was Amber Watkins. Claire sat in her car outside Amber's townhouse long after sunset, watching the glow from inside flicker across the blinds. Part of her wanted to storm in, arrest her on the spot. The other part wanted to understand why a friendship that spanned 10 years ended in death. But before she could make a move, her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "You're looking at the wrong girl." A second message followed, a photo attachment. It showed the same lake, the same fog, the same night. And in the background, half hidden behind the reeds, a second figure standing near the water. The text message replayed in Claire Jensen's mind as she drove toward the lake. "You're looking at the wrong girl." Her gut told her it was bait, but detectives lived by 2 rules: never ignore a lead and never underestimate a liar. The night was cold again, the kind of stillness that made every sound echo. The fog off Lake Marin hung thick as gauze. Her flashlight cut a narrow beam across the waterline, where the jogger had first found the body. The reeds hissed in the wind. A rustle behind her. She turned, gun half drawn. Nothing, just the creak of old branches. Then in the distance she saw it, a faint shimmer of light across the water like a phone screen catching the fog. By the time she reached the spot, it was gone. Back at the precinct, the tech team had finished restoring the corrupted video from Leela's USB. Detective Moreno stood over the monitor, expression unreadable. "You'll want to see this." The screen flickered. Grainy, low light, time-stamped 11:58 p.m., the night before Leela's death. Leela was pacing her room, whispering into her phone as if on a call. "Amber, I can't keep this. He'll find out. You said no one would get hurt." Then a knock at the door. Leela froze, whispering, "He's here." The feed shifted as she reached for the camera, then static. When the image returned for a split second, the last frame captured a man's reflection in the mirror. Tall, wearing a dark jacket, hood up. The face was blurred. But it wasn't Amber. By morning, the media was relentless. Murder or misunderstanding blared across headlines. Amber Watkins' name trended online. The department received dozens of tips, most useless, but one caller, a motel clerk from Brookside, 10 miles out, claimed he recognized Amber's car parked outside his property around 2 a.m. that night. She wasn't alone. A man was with her. Claire and Moreno drove out immediately.
The motel was the kind of place where secrets stayed cheap, flickering neon, faded red doors, the smell of old cigarettes. Room 14 was registered under Amber's credit card. The clerk described the man as mid-30s, dark beard, gray hoodie, looked nervous. Inside the room, forensic lights revealed partial prints, a cigarette butt, and something else, a hotel notepad with 2 words scrawled in shaky handwriting. "Don't call police." They ran the prints. The match came back within the hour. Elias Carter, 34, a known fraud suspect, last investigated 3 years prior for identity theft and extortion. No violent record, but plenty of deception. And then came the real twist. Carter had once worked at Riverside Credit Union, the same bank where Amber had been employed before quitting suddenly last spring. When Claire pulled Amber's file, she found something that hadn't been flagged before, a joint savings account opened under Leela Trent's name, with both Leela and Amber listed as holders. The balance? Over $75,000. The transactions showed multiple deposits from shell companies connected to Carter. This wasn't about jealousy. It was about money. Detective Moreno leaned back in his chair. So Leela figures it out, wants out. Amber and Carter panic. Maybe, but Leela wasn't supposed to die. Someone wanted to silence her, fast. Still, something didn't line up. Amber's text, "You'll find it. Be careful whose side you're on," sounded less like a threat and more like a warning. Claire dug deeper. Among the recovered files on the USB, she found hidden metadata, fragments of a second recording. When they restored the audio, a voice came through faintly. Male, urgent. "Amber, she's recording us. We have to stop her before she goes to the cops. You said you handled it." Then Amber's voice, trembling. "Not like this, Eli. Not like this." A door slammed. Silence. The arrest warrant came within hours. By evening, officers surrounded Amber's townhouse. Lights blazed against the rain-slicked driveway. But when the SWAT team entered, nothing. The house was empty. Amber Watkins had vanished. Inside, they found her laptop open on the kitchen counter. The screen displayed a single message window, a chat thread with E. Carter. The last message sent 2 hours prior. "It's over. They found the video. I'm done running." Below it, a reply. "No, you're not. Meet me where it started." Attached was a GPS coordinate, Lake Marin. Claire and Moreno reached the lake by midnight. Backup units spread out, searchlights slicing through the fog. The reflection of flashing blue lights shimmered across the black water. Then a voice cut through the static of radios. "Movement near the dock." They sprinted toward the sound. 2 figures stood at the edge, Amber and Elias Carter. Amber's coat flapped in the wind, her red scarf soaked with rain. Carter's hands were empty, palms raised. Claire shouted, "Amber, step away from him." But Amber wasn't looking at Claire. She was staring at Carter, furious, broken. "You said no one would die. You promised me." "He left us no choice. You think I wanted this? You think I wanted her to drown?" Claire moved closer, her gun steady. "Amber, listen to me. You can still fix this." Amber turned, tears in her eyes, trembling, then whispered, "I didn't kill her. I tried to save her." Before anyone could react, Carter lunged. The struggle lasted seconds, a flash of movement, the scream of splintering wood, and both fell into the water with a violent splash. Officers rushed forward. Searchlights scanned the surface. They pulled Carter out first, coughing, fighting, furious. Amber was found moments later, floating near the reeds, barely breathing. At the hospital, Amber regained consciousness long enough to speak once. Claire sat beside her bed, recorder on the table. "He pushed her," Amber whispered. "Leela found the transfers. She wanted to go to the cops. I told her we could fix it, but Eli panicked. He tried to scare her, make it look like an accident. But she slipped, hit her head." Tears slid down her temple. "I didn't mean for any of it to happen." "Then why hide the body?" Claire asked. Amber's gaze unfocused. "Because he said if I didn't help, I'd end up like her." Her heart monitor began to flatline before she could say another word. The DA's office prepared charges against Elias Carter within days: manslaughter, financial fraud, and obstruction. The public saw closure, the case neatly tied up for the headlines. But Detective Claire Jensen couldn't shake one thing: the messages from the unknown number, the photograph showing a second figure at the lake. Carter and Amber accounted for two, but the image showed three silhouettes. She returned to the digital forensics team to trace the origin of that anonymous text. It had been routed through a VPN, impossible to trace, but the device signature was registered to a familiar source: Riverside Credit Union's internal network, 2 years after Carter had been fired. Someone else had been watching from the start. That night, as Claire left the precinct, her phone buzzed again. One new message. No number. "You got the wrong man this time, detective." Attached was a short video, shaky, handheld, filmed from across the lake. In the reflection of the water, two figures struggled, but a third stood at the shoreline, watching silently, never intervening.
By the time dawn broke over Lake Marin, Detective Claire Jensen had replayed that anonymous video at least 20 times. Each time, her heart thudded harder. The footage was grainy and distant, but unmistakable. The third figure on the shore had stood still, arms folded, head tilted slightly, as if studying the scene rather than reacting to it. No panic, no movement to help, just silent observation. Whoever had recorded it hadn't stumbled upon a crime. They had anticipated it. Forensics ran enhancements, but the reflection was too warped for facial ID. The shape was narrow-shouldered, possibly female, wearing a hooded jacket. The timestamp matched 2:13 a.m., the minute before Leela's fatal call. That meant one thing. Someone else had been there that night, watching both Leela and Amber, and perhaps manipulating them all. Claire revisited the evidence board in her office, red strings crisscrossing the walls. Amber's timeline, Leela's last movements, Carter's financial trail, everything led back to that shared bank account. But what if the money wasn't the motive? What if it was the cover? She called Moreno. "Pull all account access logs from Riverside Credit Union for the past 6 months. I want every employee still connected to those shell deposits." An hour later, he called back. "You're not going to like this. The transfer system Carter used, it was still active after he left. Someone kept it running under a new profile." "Who?" "Account handler named Rebecca Holt. Joined last year. No record of termination." Claire froze. Rebecca Holt. Leela's former roommate. Rebecca had moved out 6 months earlier, right before Amber quit her job. Leela had mentioned her briefly during early interviews. Too quiet, kept to herself. When the detectives pulled her personnel file, they found she'd been working in the fraud prevention department. She had full access to account monitoring, encryption logs, and transfer authorizations. She wasn't just another employee, she was the one who could erase trails. That afternoon, Claire and Marino drove to Rebecca's listed address, a small rental on the outskirts of town surrounded by pines and isolation. A mailbox hung crooked, dust collecting on the porch light. But the car in the driveway, a silver Mazda, was warm to the touch. Inside, the air smelled faintly of bleach. On the living room floor lay stacks of printed bank ledgers, torn photographs, and a half-burned red coat. The same kind Amber owned. Claire crouched beside it, heart pounding. She's been one step ahead this whole time. In the corner sat a corkboard. On it, photos of Amber, Leela, Elias Carter, and even Claire herself, pinned and labeled in neat handwriting. At the center, a note scrawled in black marker. Only one of them knew the truth. The sound of a door creaking upstairs made Claire draw her weapon. "Police! Rebecca Holt! Come out slowly!" Silence. Then, faint footsteps across old wood. They moved toward the back stairwell. Claire signaled Moreno, and they split.
she taking the stairs, he circling outside. At the top landing, the smell of bleach grew stronger. Claire's flashlight swept across a cluttered hallway lined with newspaper clippings about Leela Trent's death and Amber's arrest. Someone had been collecting everything. Then, from the far room, a voice. "I knew you'd come, Detective." Rebecca Holt stepped into view. Mid-30s, thin, pale, her eyes wide and sleepless. She wore a dark hoodie, her hands raised. "Put the gun down, Claire. You've already made one mistake. Don't make another." Claire kept her stance firm. "You were there at the lake." Rebecca smiled faintly. "Of course I was. It was my plan, but not for her to die." "You were part of the fraud ring with Carter?" "No, I created it. Carter and Amber were just tools. They thought they were stealing from the system, but they were stealing from me." She stepped closer. "Leela was smart, too smart. She figured it out, realized the money was being funneled overseas, not to Carter's shell accounts. She confronted Amber and Amber panicked. That's when I had to step in." Claire's pulse hammered. "You're admitting to moving her body?" Rebecca tilted her head. "Not killing her. She was still breathing when I left. Carter finished what I couldn't." "Then why send me the message? Why expose yourself?" Rebecca's eyes gleamed. "Because Carter wasn't supposed to live either." Downstairs, Moreno's voice echoed from his radio. "Claire, she's got something in her hand." Rebecca lunged toward the window. The flash of metal caught the light. Not a gun, but a phone. She tapped the screen once. A loud beep filled the room. Claire dove forward, slamming her to the floor, yanking the device away. On the screen was a countdown. 009, 008. "Get out!" Claire shouted. They burst into the hallway as a muffled boom ripped through the downstairs kitchen, a small explosive, likely chemical, sending smoke billowing through the house. By the time the smoke cleared, Rebecca was gone. A broken window, blood on the sill, footprints leading into the woods. A full-scale manhunt stretched across the next 2 days. Carter, now in custody, refused to speak at first, but when confronted with Rebecca's photo, his face drained of color. "She said she'd protect us. She said she had everything planned. When Leela died, she said we just needed to clean up, not panic. Then she started sending those messages, to you, to me, like she was controlling it all." He leaned forward, trembling. "You'll never find her. She doesn't run from the law, she builds it." Weeks passed. The public moved on. Amber's funeral drew hundreds. Elias Carter accepted a plea deal for involuntary manslaughter, though Claire knew the truth ran deeper. But Rebecca Holt remained missing. Every digital trace erased, every transaction redirected. It was as if she had deleted herself from existence. Until, one night, long after the case was declared cold, Claire's phone buzzed again. No number, no location, just a single message. "We never met by accident." Attached was a photograph. Claire's office, taken from outside her window. In the reflection of the glass, a faint silhouette stood in the darkness, hooded, motionless. Underneath, another message appeared, seconds later. "Tell me, Detective, whose alibi doesn't add up now?" If you thought this case was over, it isn't. Subscribe, because the next one will make you question every friendship you've ever had.